Welcome to the Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? Let's proclaim the greatest radio show.
Welcome, everyone, to our first fantasy episode of the 2017 season. I'm your host, Jim Sella, here with Jay Dash. Dash is our fantasy expert, gives the best fantasy advice anywhere to be found, better than ESPN, better than that dude. What's his name? What's his name on ESPN? The loser that always gives Matthew Berry. Dude's garbage.
Yeah, Matthew Berry. Well,
Dude,
ESPN as a
Matthew
whole was
garbage.
falling apart.
Please believe. You need fantasy advice, you come to The Spread. Tweet us at bet_the_spread. Tweet me at betjimtowin, or check out our Facebook page. That's where it's all happening. Right now, we got Dash, the top 10 rookies to make an impact this year in fantasy football.
Yes. Now, do you want to start with number 10 and work your way up to 1, or do you want to start with 1 and go to 10?
However you want to do it. You're the fantasy guru.
Well, it doesn't matter to me, man. We could start at number 10, I guess. And we'll start with Carolina wide receiver Curtis Samuel. He was drafted in the second round, 40th overall. They're already saying this guy's expected to start at slot wide receiver. They have Kelvin Benjamin and Devin Funchess out there. Really, they don't have anything behind them in terms of wide receivers. Obviously, Olsen out there is a beast. But they also brought in Christian McCaffrey as well, who could get some work in the passing game. He's obviously good in the passing game. But Curtis Samuel's supposed to start in the slot, at least early on here. That's what they're saying. They compare this guy to Percy Harvin, so as long as he doesn't have all the head injuries and all the health problems like Percy Harvin, that's definitely a good thing. But Curtis Samuel should see some kind of production at least early in the season. We'll see how it goes from there.
Ted Ginn had good production there last year. Samuel's basically his replacement. Ginn moved on to, I believe it was New Orleans, so you could definitely see some fantasy production out of this guy.
And at number 9, we have Mike Williams, wide receiver from the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, in Dynasty, he's probably ranked higher. He was taken 7th overall in the draft, but it scares me out there because they got Keenan Allen. He's supposed to be coming back healthy. You remember Tyrell Williams from last season you had on your fantasy team. He wasn't that terrible. They have Dontrell Inman, Travis Benjamin, Hunter Henry, Antonio Gates. So while Mike Williams is a beast, I don't have him in the top 5 or anything just because there's so much going on out there. And plus, I really don't trust Phillip Rivers to get all these guys the ball. So Mike Williams, he might start to make an impact. He's probably the best wide receiver in terms of talent on this roster now, maybe behind Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen I always liked, but Mike Williams supposed to be a beast. However, there's all these guys there. I don't see him coming out and making an impact immediately from day one. He might get some more production as the season goes along, but I don't think he's going to make a huge fantasy impact this season.
I will say Inman is, I forget, it's something minor. It's nothing that's going to keep him out of the year, but he's not in OTAs, and he's probably going to miss some at camp, I believe I read. So Williams will at least get a shot to show what he's got.
And at number 8, we have a running back from Kansas City, Kareem Hunt. He went in the 3rd round, 86th overall. Spencer Ware is supposed to be the guy out there, but there's nothing saying he's going to keep the job. They're already talking up Kareem Hunt, saying he's at least going to mix in with Spencer Ware to begin the season at least. And they believe he can overtake him at some point during the season. So I think Kareem Hunt could be a solid add as well.
You never know what's going to happen in Kansas City. They always have a running back that produces. Like you said, Spencer Ware is no lock to be that number 1 guy. He's kind of a guy who's took a job because Jamal Charles and couldn't stay healthy, and I forget the other guy's name. It's down there. So any running back that gets the reps at Kansas City, I feel like is going to produce.
Charkandrick?
Yeah, Charkandrick West. C-Dub.
At number 7, I have a Green Bay running back, Jamal Williams. Now, he was taken in the 4th round, 134th overall, but really all they have out there, well, what they had out there last season was the wide receiver turn running back, Ty Montgomery. Now, they did bring in a couple other young running backs this season, including Aaron Jones, a running back from UTEP, but they believe Jamal Williams is that guy that is going to unseat Ty Montgomery this season, and somebody has to, so you could keep an eye on Aaron Jones as camp goes along. Maybe he is the guy to step up, but right now everybody believes it's going to be Jamal Williams.
Yeah, and I like Montgomery at running back, but I like him as a third down back, not an every down back. He doesn't have the body build, I feel like, to contribute as an every down back. So if Jamal Williams can come in and be that first, second down back, I think Ty fits in well at third down back, and I think that, I don't want to say solves Green Bay's backfield problem, but definitely helps.
At number 6, another running back from Minnesota, Delvin Cook. He went in the second round, 41st overall. Adrian Peterson, we know, is gone now. They did bring in Latavius Murray. They still have Jerick McKinnon out there. I think Jerick McKinnon is going to play third fiddle to Delvin Cook and Latavius Murray. I like Latavius Murray. He was always a good back in Oakland, but it seems like they believe Delvin Cook right now is going to unseat Latavius Murray at least some point in the season. I would have to believe Murray gets the go on day one, but Delvin Cook will get mixed in with him, and they're saying they believe Delvin Cook. I mean, if you draft this guy in the second round, you believe he's going to start for you at some point. So they believe Delvin Cook can overtake Murray at some point this season. So you might not see production from Cook right away, maybe the first 4 weeks or something. But if he does succeed in a limited role, he could overtake Murray.
I like Cook. I had him go into the Packers, I believe it was, in one of my mock drafts before the draft took place. So I think this guy's a first-round talent. And in Minnesota, Adrian Peterson produced for all those years. It wasn't just because Peterson's good. It's because Minnesota values running the football. So Cook could definitely produce big time for the Vikings.
Yeah, this list really isn't all about talent. It's a mix of talent plus the situation you're put in, what team you went
Believe
to.
it.
So, I mean, right here, number 5, I have Leonard Fournette. This may be the most talented guy in this list, but he went to Jacksonville, 4th overall. Some people compare him to Ezekiel Elliott and Todd Gurley. Those are the most recent beast running backs drafted. Now, if he's like Ezekiel Elliott, great. If he's like Todd Gurley, who had a good rookie year, and I still like Todd Gurley, but in that system out there, it was just so rough for him last season. I think it's more like that for Leonard Fournette. You remember Ezekiel Elliott came in to the league with one of the best offensive lines in football. Now, Jacksonville did go out and bring in Brandon Elbert, so that does help their offensive line, but I don't think that's going to fix everything out there. But he should be the starter. I mean, they got Chris Ivory and TJ Yeldon. I'm hearing he's going to mix in with those guys this season. Well, if you're drafting this guy 4th overall and he can't beat out Chris Ivory and TJ Yeldon, there's something wrong. So I think Leonard Fournette will see at least the majority of carries. I just don't know how much he's going to be able to produce from it in Jacksonville.
Well, Albert has to show up before he can help him run the football, so I think you got this one right because he hasn't even been in contact with the team since they traded for him.
Probably doesn't want to play out there, man.
It's weird because they have an up-and-coming defense. The offense has been good in the fourth quarters, not to win games, but mostly because they're always behind by so much.
Yeah, and they just
so
start
they get a lot
gunning
of
the ball.
garbage time points. So that's the one thing about Jacksonville that people don't really realize. They see them scoring points and, finishing closer to 500 now, but they're not quite there.
At number 4, another running back, Semaj Perine is his name. He was drafted in the 4th round, 114th overall. Now, this is what I'm talking about, the situation you're going to. They got Rob Kelly out there, who was a decent running back last season. Matt Jones, you remember, was it going into last season? Everybody believed Matt Jones was going to be this great running back. He failed out there. Chris Thompson they still have out there, but they believe Semaj Perine can actually take this job from Kelly by day one, and this guy looks like a beast. I was watching some of his film earlier today because I really didn't know how to say his name. I thought it was Perine, but it's Perine. This guy does look like a beast, and there's no reason he can't unseat Rob Kelly. And if he's the starter from day one, I mean, again, it's early right now, so you're going to have to go through camp, see what's going on and everything, but keep this guy's name in mind. He could turn out to be the starter, and you can get some good numbers out of Washington running backs. Not beast. He's not going to be a running back number 1 or anything this season, but I think he can give you RB2 numbers.
Yeah, and Washington wants to look to run the ball a little bit better this year. They lost Pierre Garçon. They lost Deshaun Jackson. They did add Terrell Pryor. Did they lose another receiver, Dash? Who was their third receiver?
Jamison Crowder?
Yes, that's who it was. I can never remember. I should just remember New England Clam Chowder.
Washington Clam Crowder.
Is that the red or the white? Can never remember that.
Yeah, but semaj Perine, dude, I think this may end up being. I'm not going to say he's going to be the best running back to draft this season. He's definitely not the best long term if we're talking in terms of dynasty, because I think you're going to want to go receivers, obviously, if you're going dynasty, because they have a longer shelf life than running backs. But running backs do have a better shot to produce immediately, and I think Perine can do that.
Perine.
All right, let's move on to number 3 here, and that is running back from Carolina. He was drafted 8th overall, Christian McCaffrey. Everybody loves this guy. All they have out there is Jonathan Stewart. They believe Jonathan Stewart and McCaffrey will begin with some kind of a timeshare, but they think McCaffrey will eventually take over as the 3-down back, well, really the starter overall, and Jonathan Stewart will turn into the short yardage or goal line back. And I think that's going to happen. I mean, they drafted this guy high enough. He can get it done in the passing game as well, and that is huge. Even if Jonathan Stewart does take the goal line touches away from McCaffrey, the way McCaffrey can get it done both in the run game and the passing game, he's still going to be successful out there as long as they block for Cam Newton.
Yeah, people were real big on McCaffrey. I like the situation he's in. I think being with a running back like Stewart, being in a system like Carolina, he'll be able to move around, not necessarily just have to tote the rock from behind the line 30 times a game. They're going to find a way to mix him around, move him into the slot. So I think he has a really good chance at putting up big overall numbers. He may even get some punt or kick returns in there, get another yard, a couple more yards, a couple touchdowns, maybe even just one. Definitely somebody who's going to put up big points fantasy-wise this year, I think.
Yeah, you look, like I mentioned before, there's that Curtis Samuel who I had ranked at number 10, who they drafted in the second round. But they have Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen, and behind that, somebody else got to start to produce, and I think he's the best bet to do that.
Yeah, and Benjamin came into camp overweight, and they're not liking what they're seeing from Funchess recently. So
I never really cared for that guy.
For Funchess?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had him go to New England, actually, in our mock draft.
I do remember that,
he came out. And the Panthers took him way higher. It was definitely a reach.
Yeah, Kelvin Benjamin went down that season, and Funchess turned into the number 1, and everybody said, oh, he's just going to step right in for Benjamin. Benjamin's a beast. Funchess is not.
Believe it.
At least Benjamin was a beast. We'll see. And number 2, I have tight end from Tampa Bay, O.J. Howard, drafted 19th overall. It's tough
for juice is loose.
It's tough for tight ends to produce immediately. I mean, running back's the easiest. Wide receiver's tough as well, but tight end is really the hardest position to succeed at from day one. But I just love the situation he's in here. That the other tight end they have out there is Cameron Brate. You know, Winston does a solid job with his tight ends. Cameron Brate wasn't terrible last season. Brate is nothing like O.J. Howard, though. This guy is a beast. Winston's on the rise. He had a pretty good season last year. He has a ton of weapons out there. They brought over Deshaun Jackson. Still have Mike Evans out there. I think O.J. Howard can be a big part of this offense and do big things out there. It might be a little bit of a slow start for him because, like I said, it's tough for tight ends. But I think as the season goes along, he's definitely the best tight end on this roster. Winston's pretty decent with tight ends, so I see him in a good situation, good talent. I see him having a decent rookie season.
With Jackson and Evans stretching the field, Howard should have a lot of room to move around in the middle. So like you said, he might not produce right away the first few weeks, but I would say week 6, week 7, you're really going to see that guy hit his stride.
And number 1, I'm going to go with a wide receiver. Like I said, it's more likely running backs succeed early. It's a little tougher for wide receivers. But this guy to me is in a perfect situation, and that is Corey Davis in Tennessee. Now, he was drafted 5th overall. Mariota had a pretty nice season last year, and I expect him to take another step forward this year. And we talked about it a couple years ago, how they put some pretty good receivers around Tennessee. They were all young. None of them really worked out. They do have Rashard Matthews out there, who's a guy I really like, but he is definitely not a number 1. He's more of a possession receiver to me. Tajay Sharp really didn't succeed last year. Now, he's still a young guy. He can still step up this season coming into, I believe, his second year, right? Or is this Tajay's 3rd year?
I think it's his 2nd year.
And Harry Douglas is out there. Corey Davis is definitely the most talented guy out there. They need a number 1 wide receiver out there. Mariota can do big things with Corey Davis, I believe. And I think he'll have a pretty solid rookie season. And it could happen from day one. I know it's tough for receivers, but from what I see out there, I think he's the guy to go to.
They're going to need somebody on offense to perform down there. They're not going to be able to keep running the ball like they did last year. Teams are going to start stacking the box. Mariota's going to have to start beating people with his arm. Davis is a good route runner, and Mariota's good at putting the ball where a receiver can catch it and run with it in stride. So they should be a good combo, and they honestly have as good as a chance as anybody else.
A couple guys you probably thought may be on this list, but you didn't hear their names. John Ross, he was drafted 9th overall. He went to Cincinnati. I've yet to see anyone but AJ Green produce with Andy Dalton out there. They have Tyler Eifert as well, another guy I like. So I think between them, Brandon LaFell didn't succeed in terms of fantasy last season. We're still waiting for Tyler Boyd to succeed. I do think John Ross is probably more talented than everybody else besides AJ Green. I just don't see him succeeding yet this season. And Andy Dalton, as long as AJ Green's there, I don't see anybody else succeeding in the passing game. And running back Joe Mixon from Cincinnati, who went in the second round, 48th overall. They still have Giovanni Bernard out there. They still have Jeremy Hill out there. Everybody believes Joe Mixon is going to be the number one running back at some point this season, but you're still going to have to get those other two guys involved. So it's too much for me. I'm passing on those guys in fantasy, at least right now, from what I know. What
about Mitch Trubisky?
No, I'm not going with any quarterbacks this season, man. I can't do it. There's no one that if I was going to go with one, I would say Deshaun Watson out in Houston. But besides that, I'm not feeling any of these quarterbacks. A couple other guys real quick, though. Marlon Mack, a running back from Indy who went in the 4th round, 143rd overall. That's who they have behind Frank Gore. Frank Gore's on his last leg at this point. Marlon Mack could take over that job at some point this season, whether injury or not. David Njoku from Cleveland, the tight end out there, 29th overall in the 1st round. They cut Barnage. I don't see huge things because it's going to be tough because they really have no quarterback out there. They really don't have any receivers out there. So, and like I said, it's tough for tight ends to do it year one. So he might be decent. I think he's a late round flyer at best. Juju Smith-Schuster, we'll have to see if Martavis Bryant can keep his nose clean. And Eli Rogers, that's who he's battling for that 3rd spot, I would have to believe. But if something happens to Bryant, he could step up to number 2 if he has a good camp. And one other guy, Taywan Taylor, another wide receiver from Tennessee. We mentioned Corey Davis, my number 1 guy here. But this guy was drafted in the 3rd round, 72nd overall. And you never know. It's early right now. We'll have to see what happens in camp. But it happens a lot. The guys drafted 3rd, 4th, 5th round sometimes with the guy that steps up over that guy drafted in the 1st round, at least early in their career.
Well, Dash, just like you've said a few times now, it's not always just talent. Sometimes it's situation and opportunity. And guys that have been drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round at running back might have an opportunity to unseat a guy, like in the Washington situation. Whereas Joe Mixon, a 1st, 2nd round draft pick? Second round draft pick. He's buried in the depth chart behind 2 good running backs there in Cincinnati. So it's not always just about how talented a guy is. It's about the situation he's in.
Believe it. But that's it, man. That's what I have. Anybody else you think I should have put on this list?
JK-47 should be having a breakout year, but he blew his knees out.
I thought you were going to mention Connor, man.
James Conner has a chance at doing some good things for the Steelers, but I don't know if necessarily fantasy-wise because Le'Veon Bell gets 500 freaking carries a year.
Well, that's the thing, though, man. If you're going to handcuff anybody, Le'Veon's the guy to handcuff because he has he ever made it through a full season? I don't think so. And
no.
Whether suspension or injury.
Right, yeah. He hasn't played a full year yet, but he's still one of the top point getters in fantasy every year.
Definitely, but if he goes down, man, I think James Conner can step right in and give you very good fantasy points.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. If Le'Veon can't play, then Conner will put up big points for sure. I just think as long as Le'Veon's healthy in those situations, he's going to get most of the opportunities. So maybe if you have a deep bench and you can stash Conner there, okay, or just be vigilant and keep an eye, and as soon as Bell gets hurt, go out and pick him up.
Yeah, I mean, he could turn into a goal line back as well, and if you're in a touchdown-heavy league, maybe he could work out for you that way as well.
Yeah, I could see Connor getting like 5, and this would be like the top year he would have, like 600 yards rushing, and then like 8 touchdowns, because he's definitely a better short yardage runner than Le'Veon. Le'Veon's style doesn't really suit a goal line running back because he's too patient in those short yardage situations sometimes, where Connor just goes straight ahead.
Believe it.
But fans, any questions or comments? Like I said at the beginning of the show, hit us up on Twitter at bet_the_spread. Hit me up on Twitter at betjimthewin. Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/betthespread. Come back to YouTube. We provide you with the best fantasy information anywhere. No BS. We're not regurgitating what we read on NFL.com or ESPN.com. Those guys don't know what the hell they're talking about. We keep it real.